Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
We turn now to our Reporters Roundtable, a first-time edition. Two Chicago Tribune reporters, Rick Pearson joining us, and Bill Ruthhart, down here this week because new mayor-elect Lori Lightfoot, recently elected as Chicago's new mayor, is in Springfield this week. And so you guys are down here. It's good to have you with us and good to have you on Capitol Connection.
Good to be here.
Mayor Lightfoot seemed to address head-on this recent issue, a talking point or a discussion about an idea to possibly divide the state, kick Chicago out. And she seemed to really tangle with that. Rick, what are some of the, how does Chicago interplay with the state government? You've been covering both for a long time.
Well, I mean, obviously, the regionalism issue is a long-standing issue, and we've seen it in campaigns on Republican sides, on Democratic sides. We saw it with Bruce Rauner in the last governor campaign of there's the rest of the state and there's Chicago. So there's always going to be that political tension that exists. And yes, now you have kind of this resolution to divide the state, which really isn't going to go anywhere. But it certainly is a rallying point for those that want to play the game that, oh, Chicago gets bailed out by Springfield and we get nothing. But I think there's a deeper issue here, and it goes to ideology, political ideology. When you look at things like gun control, when you look at things like finances, although it's been disproven, Chicago does not get an unfair share of its money. But I think it's the ideology and more of the progressive liberal ideology that has really taken kind of the majorities when you look at the General Assembly and the Democrats there, and now with the new Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Yeah, Bill, a lot of our audience may know the name Rahm Emanuel or Mayor's Daily from years gone by, but Lori Lightfoot is a new name, a fresh face. Introduce her to us if you can. What were some of her campaign planks, her themes, and how did she rally the electorate in Chicago to win that first election before the more dominant performance recently?
A little background first. She's a former federal prosecutor. She's a partner at Mayer Brown, major international law firm. She really kind of came on the political scene as a low-level appointment to the Chicago Police Board by Mayor Emanuel, ironically enough. And then as the Laquan McDonald shooting came up in Chicago, policing became a very controversial issue, elevated her visibility substantially. Emanuel tapped her again to be on this police reform task force to try to deal with some of the issues within the Chicago Police Department. That really elevated her profile. Her name recognition got higher, but her campaign really kind of caught lightning in a bottle when longtime Chicago Alderman Ed Burke was charged with attempted extortion. Lightfoot quickly painted the other four frontrunners in the race as tied to the old machine, tied to the establishment. As a former federal prosecutor, a political outsider, she had a message at the ready for that kind of moment. She capitalized on it.
The political outsider label, that really sells, I suppose. I saw a headline that said the machine is dead because Lori Lightfoot won. I think it was an op-ed. Is that a fair statement?
Well, the machine isn't what it used to be back in the days when you had patronage that you could enforce the loyalty to go out and work and get the votes. But when you look at the fact that here she defeats Tony Preckwinkle, the Cook County Board President, and Cook County Democratic Chairman, 74% to 26%. Tony Preckwinkle, when you're a political boss, it's to get the votes out. She didn't win any of the 50 wards in the city of Chicago. She won about 20 precincts out of more than 2,000 precincts. Tony Preckwinkle did. That says a lot about, how can you deliver votes these days when patronage has gone more from getting people to work, and there's still plenty of that. But now it's kind of shifted more to pinstripe patronage in the contracts.
Right. That's a good point. And I wonder, maybe this is a hard question to answer, but if you can take a stab at it for me.
Sure.
Which do you think propelled her candidacy more, her being the police reform candidate in the era of the Laquan McDonald tape, or the Ed Burke scandal? Could she have won without both of those ingredients?
Probably not, but Ed Burke was much bigger. And it spoke to what Chicagoans in many different ways interacting with aldermen or the city government, this perception that things aren't on the level. And everybody, in many ways, you talk to Chicagoans, they have some example where they needed a permit or they needed something done and it wasn't as easy as it should have been. And she, in many ways, spoke to those frustrations of people just in their everyday lives. Not to mention the whole 30 aldermen going to prison for, corruption tied to their job since 1972. These are long-standing issues. And so it was kind of a flashpoint of the campaign. Certainly, she doesn't have the biographical credibility without her work on policing issues and without being known for that. And then she also had the credibility of running against Rahm Emanuel, you know, before he got out of the race in September. And a lot of the other front runners or big names jumped in after he got out. And so that also, I think, helped her with the electorate.
Well, I think she'll play ball to a certain extent, but when you're talking about a 50-member council, and you're roughly changing, I think, about overall, maybe about a third, maybe 15% would be kind of in that real progressive ballpark. I mean, there's still a lot of old hands that are around. The real question is, how does she deal with them? Because they know the process, they know the procedure, and yes, she's had some time in City Hall, but not to the extent of having to deal with a legislative body.
All right, Chicago, of course, the biggest state here in the land of Lincoln. It'll have a lot of impact on state policies as well. We'll stay tuned and keep reading your reporting as these next few transition months unfurl. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.
We're back in a moment.